Yep, good, good, good. And we're live on YouTube. And I'm just going to see whether Facebook is going to kick in any second now. Slight delay. For those who are joining us, just really want to say good afternoon and welcome to the webinar. We're just going to wait for more people to join us because we've got quite a few people, like I see on a different screen, who've registered. Maybe they haven't clocked it. It's 5 o'clock yet, but the counter is starting to pick up, as you can see. Okay, we'll give them 1 more minute, and then we're going to start this meeting properly. But whilst we're waiting, it's really just, I suppose today is really the symbolism of what today's all about in terms of how we've got here a year later, in terms of the change of law, which I think for most of us went under the radar in terms of the public understanding and appreciation of what was happening in the world because of COVID. And COVID, and it still does, as we know today, is all embracing. And so serious subject like this, I think did definitely go under the radar. But with this 1 year anniversary, it's allowing us to review and reflect. Where are we 1 year on? How's it going to transform itself going forward across the wider community, but specifically ethnic minorities, and in this case, the Black community, as to where we stand on this. What's our view? Are we in? Are we out? Are we sitting on the fence? We're not sure. Do we need things clarified? Well, this is the place to do it. And so I welcome you all, the attendees who are joining us, and our special panelists here today to discuss this. So I'm going to go start this meeting now, and just highlight that today, 20th of May, is the anniversary of the opt-out law on organ donation in England. And today's a great opportunity to address the hesitancy within the Black community in terms of discussing, debating the reflective, present, and forward-thinking views of all interested parties related to organ donation. So the panel of you see in front of you are a mixture of people from different skills, faith, views about this subject matter of organ donation, whether it be deceased or living. And we're going to capture both, even though the change of law is specific to deceased, but living is very important as well. So we're going to touch on that. The purpose and the objective of the webinar is listening, discussing, informing with verified facts in relation to organ donation. We will highlight the level of expected fair and balanced online behavior and etiquette amongst us as panelists, but also you who are watching. There's going to be a poll which we're going to run in a few minutes. I just want to get more people before we run the poll. It's asking 2 particular questions. If you have any questions, this is to the attendees, please put it in the Q&A. Drop your questions into the Q&A box, and we as a panel will either verbally answer those questions, or one of us will actually type a response directly back so that everyone can see the actual views. And if there's a particular question, a burning question that you're seeing that you want to really get discussed, we'll just upvote and we'll see it come on screen, and we'll then go to that particular question. It's very interactive. I think really that's about it. The webinar is going to last approximately 90 minutes. It's being recorded. It's going to be recorded and available soon, maybe tomorrow or probably the Monday, to be uploaded to YouTube for those who really informed us and said, I can't be here today at 5, but it's going to be recorded. It is being recorded for YouTube. And really, that's about it. So we will do the poll soon. I'm going to hold on for more people. We've got 52 people, still more to come. I'm going to hand over to my sidekick, my better half, my soulmate, Miss Beverly DeGale.
First of all, I'd like to introduce our panelist of speakers, which includes medical professionals, stakeholders and patients affected by organ-related disorders. I would also respectfully request that all speakers adhere to the scheduled timings in order to try and ensure that the webinar finishes as close to the planned time of 6:30 p.m. First of all, I'd like to introduce everyone to Ace, DJ Ace, BBC One Extra presenter, podcaster, personality, and also in need of a kidney donor. Mike Stevens, consultant, transplant and organ retrieval surgeon, is with us. Della Eduwu, thank you. I guess I've got that right. Thank you, Della. Founder of Gift of Living Kidney Donation, Gold. Angela Ditchfield, lead nurse diversity and inclusion, specialist nurse organ donation, otherwise known as SNOD. Pastor Ian Sweeney, president of the Adventist Church in UK and Ireland. We've got Lonyo, who is a DJ, actor and singer and a kidney and pancreas recipient. And we have DJ Mr. P, radio presenter, voiceover, photographer, marketeer, recording engineer. Mr. P has an alternative view to organ donation. Just want to say thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and also thank you to everybody that has secured their place in our discussion.
Okay. So on that note, to fire up the debate we're going to have later, I've put together a presentation that's going to, I'm going to share with you, and it's a presentation about organ donation. Let me just make sure that you can see the Asian lady and the African Caribbean gentleman. Can I get a thumbs up from someone? Yep, nods of heads, yep. Okay, so what I'm going to do, in a handful of slides, use pictorial and words to describe where we are right now in terms of organ donation. This is a particularly old slide from the NHS, but it still resonates because it's true. South Asian and Black people are 3 times more likely to need an organ transplant. But less than 1% of our people, and that's Black and Asian. So you imagine if you split it, just how low it is in terms of a Black proportion, are on the organ donor register. And so we have a problem. And there are too many barriers to donation in terms of organs from one person to another in the deceased form or living form. So most people, as it says on the screen, would receive an organ donation from a stranger if they needed someone to save their own lives. But due to a combination of lack of understanding, myths and fears and taboos, and more importantly, a slowness of actually consenting to donate, whether it be mostly it's the families when it comes to the decision making. The consent is much lower within the Black community than in the white community. There's a massive difference. I think it's like 40% in the Black community and something over 70% in the white community. So the question is, what is happiness? As you can see on the screen, problems caused by lack of trust, low general awareness of organ donation resulting in very low debate and discussion around the subject matter, the mistrust of the medical profession, lack of information about organ donation, which isn't true. The information is there, very much there, but people, I think, at times haven't looked into it deeper, perceived or assumed religious, cultural beliefs, traditions around death, which leads to barriers relating to organ donation. A question we've seen for quite a few years now. People, we've seen it where some people saying, well, what's in it for me? If I donate a kidney as a living donor, are you going to pay me giving one of my kidneys? We know there's a black market in certain parts of the world, but that's what we're hearing sometimes. And the main thing, as I alluded to it previously, we need to stimulate family conversation and debate about donation. the slide you see on the screen is a slide from a year ago, which highlighted the facts and figures from the yearly annual transplant report, activity report. And these figures have been teased out on behalf of Black and minority ethnic people. And so from a BAME perspective, you can see the numbers are struggling to keep up with the demand in terms of the need for actual BAME donors. And if you drill into the Black numbers, they are, which I'll come on to in a second, we are struggling, but the demand outstrips the supply in terms of over 33% of BAME people needing organ transplants. But collectively, if you look at BAME, we are not even half of that figure in terms of giving. So let's go to registration numbers. A year ago, just as we were coming to the opt-out in May, the opt-out numbers were getting very high, especially from a South Asian, Bangladeshi, Pakistani, and those from the African and Caribbean point of view. The numbers were record-breaking numbers of people opting out. As you can see on the slide, back in January last year, nearly 300,000 new opt-outs. You compare it to a much lower figure on the opt-ins. 85% of those who were opting out that month were from a Black, Asian, and minority ethnic background. And the numbers of decisions have decreased considerably during, from March, April onwards because of COVID, and which was 2020. And 52% of those during that period coming from April onwards were again from ethnic minorities. These are the most recent stats from a Black perspective. Over 190,000 people had opted out before the law changed last year. That's 17% of all opt-outs where ethnicity is known. And since the law changed a year ago, so from this time last year to now, over 21,500 Black people have opted out, which is relatively good in comparison to what was happening before. So it slowed down. But what it's created is another situation. Because since the law changed a year ago, there have been 13 Black deceased or living organ donors. 13 Black individuals, whether they deceased or living, have actually donated an organ in the last year. Since the law changed a year ago, nearly 230 Black people have received a transplant. So you can see there's a big difference between those Black people who've given and those Black people who've received. So who's filling the shortage? We can come on to that. And currently, right now, there's nearly 450 Black people actively waiting for an organ transplant. So we're always searching for lifesavers, kindness of a stranger. And we personally know that because our son, Daniel DeGale, who's the reason why this charity was started 25 years ago, almost to the day that we speak, he needed a gift of life. Eventually, after a long battle, from the age of 6 to the age of 12, when he was 12, he finally found a donor in Detroit, Michigan, born-again Christian called Doreen Carney, who became his bone marrow stem cell donor. And Daniel went through all forms of the calendar in terms of the diversity of donation, because he needed to beat leukemia. He beat it with Doreen's help. He needed blood transfusions as part of his treatment right through to when we lost him to organ donation, multiple organ failure at the age of 21 in October 2008, which is why myself and Beverly and the charity got involved on that. We're talking about the gift of life, and you will hear more about this from Della. Here's a pictorial vision of what can be done. This is a group of Black living kidney donors at an event, a great event that Della and Gold put on a couple of years ago, which I attended. And it was incredible to see so many Black people who've given and received, and many of them, and Della was, I won't steal her thunder, will highlight just these individuals until they came together, didn't realize the significance of what they'd done beyond their own environment. They're not the only ones, but this is what can be achieved. So we're talking about opting in and opting out choices. And so in red, it highlights you can register to be a donor by signing up to be a donor. People can still register online to do that and make a choice. You can register not to be a donor, and opting out, and your decision will be added to the register and respected in the event of your passing away. And you can do what I've done before. You can change or amend your details. A few years ago, I was one of those people that thought, my eyes, no, I don't want them touching my eyes. When I realized it's the corneas, I went online and put in my details, and I changed it. My corneas, they can have. But that's what you can do. You can change and amend. Key things to remember. There is no deadline to making your decision. Your organs are never the property of the UK government, and it's always being deemed organ and tissue donation is and always will be a precious gift. If you pass away in circumstances that mean organ donation is a possibility, your family will always be involved before donation takes place, and your faith, beliefs, and culture will continue to be respected. One key thing, since we're under a COVID situation, if someone has COVID-19, they cannot donate their organs. But in reality, very few people actually pass away in the circumstances that make it possible for them to donate. And my last slide just really highlights what this charity is all about. We're committed. Sometimes we say maybe we should be committed to what we do, the madness, but it's a method to the madness of giving hope to patients living with a disorder, whether it be a blood cancer, blood disorder, or in this instance, organ donation needs, where the gift of life is required to save a life. And our work is driven by a belief that no one should die waiting for a donor to become available. I'm going to stop sharing my slides. That's the main agenda that we're going to talk about in this meeting. And I'm going to pass on to Beverly.
So as part of today's webinar, we wanted to show you a couple of videos where organ donation has been achieved and where organ donation is needed. And the first video we want to show is from the parents of a 9-year-old little boy who sadly passed away from asthma. His parents decided to donate his organs. His name was Blaine Smith, and here's a short video for you to see of his parents talking about their decision.
He was adventurous, creative, very competitive. In general, he just enjoyed life.
He was kind, he was loving. Yeah, he was very happy-go-lucky.
He was everything I personally wanted in a child. He was fun, he was fair, he was a friend to anybody who had the pleasure of coming into contact with him. And actually showed me a lot of wisdom for a 9-year-old little boy. At the time, because myself, I was not really interested in donating personally my organs at all. It was something that I really was kind of against at the time. And then I took myself away, and then I considered not myself, but I considered the sort of person that actually Blaine was. The kind, considerate person, always wanting to help somebody else or assist somebody. And I went away with that notion, and it kind of made my job easy, if that makes any sense, to make that decision that Blaine would want me actually to give his organs to help somebody else.
It is one of the most important decisions, I think, that you can make. And I think there's a certain comfort in knowing that if you donate, the person who has passed, their life is still purposeful. You're still having that person continue to live in some way. If you could stop another family from going through that level of pain because you've enabled someone to survive, it's worth it, definitely.
I actually feel happier for donating my son's organs rather than not donating them. I would have actually gone away with a lot of regrets for not doing it, for giving the gift of life to somebody else.
Because Blaine was very much, interested in life, happy about life. So to know that we've potentially given that to another child is so worth it.
We'd like to say thank you to Ilona and Justin for allowing us to show the video that was first shown at our Gift of Life ball in 2019. The second video that let's do ACEs first, so that people can see both sides, and then we'll do the poll. So the second video we want to show is of Ace, DJ Ace, and Ace was diagnosed with diabetes, which progressed to renal failure, and Ace urgently needs a transplant. This is Ace's video.
Organ donation is definitely something that is very taboo within our community. We don't talk about it. When I was 17 and I was filling out my driver's license form, and you get down to the part that asks you if you want to be an organ donor. And I went to my mum, I was like, look, Mum, do I fill out this part? And she was like, no, we don't do that, we don't do that. And I never, ever questioned, why the people from the ACLT got in touch with me, Bev and Oren got in touch with me, and kind of broke down to me why having this platform was so important to other people that were like me, and that there's loads of black people waiting for organs that probably don't need to wait as long.
So you've seen someone who's donated their loved one's organs, and you've seen Ace's video, the need. I'm going to ask Callum to put up the poll question for everyone. And those who are attending online, we want you to, in the space of about 30 seconds, give your views on the questions. Just going to wait for the polls to be put up. Okay, so the first question is, are you for deceased organ donation? And the second one, are you aware that you can donate a kidney as a living organ donor?
Yeah, we just need you to answer yes or no for each question. So if everybody could start doing that now, that would be really great. We'll just give you about 20 seconds.
20 to 30 seconds, and just, yeah. So go for it. A few more seconds. Right. And let's stop. So be interested to see what the percentages are. Got them? So we have the first question. Are you for deceased organ donation? 87% say yes, 13% say no.
I can see Della's shock on her face to see such a positive response, which is great. And
living donation, even stronger, 92% are aware, as against 90%. So that's interesting. That's an interesting split.
That's a good start.
So in fact, we'll take a quick note of that.
Of 87% yes, 13% no, and then 92% yes. It says 9% no, but that doesn't add up anyway. That's okay.
It can't add. Okay, so if we can move on, Callum, from that. It's good to see that. So what we're going to do now, we're going to break open this conversation with our panelists, and feel free to fire your questions in. We've already got a couple of questions on the Q&A, which we're going to touch base on, but I really just want to put it out there and welcome Lonya. We're going to ask you, if you don't mind, as someone who's received an organ transplant, tell us your story.
Before you start, Lonyo, can you come off mute so we don't miss anything? So, can we unmute him?
Yeah, see if we can. No, I don't have the
Okay.
power to mute you.
Callum, can you unmute?
You should be able to unmute him. The host.
He's done it. He's done it. Hi,
Okay.
Lonyo.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we've got you. Thanks, Mr. P.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear
Yeah,
you.
go ahead, Lonyo.
Hi. First of all, good evening and apologies for my tardiness. I'm actually at the basement of my workplace. I'm director of boxing at Storm London, and this was the only place, we're still getting it done up, that I could have silence when I hear no boxing bags being hit. So apologies for the background. My background was one of entertainment and music. And I had a very privileged life traveling the world doing music and so forth. But that ground to a halt. I'd been diabetic for 26 years. And approximately April 2015, I was diagnosed with kidney failure. And I had a 20% kidney function at the time. And I needed an emergency operation to insert a Tessio line to then allow me to start treatment with regards to dialysis. Because of my height and weight, I was on dialysis for 5 hours, 3 times a week. So that's 15 hours a week. And which meant I could only drink 250 ml of water a day. And that was pretty much my life for around 6 months. I was on the organ donation for a kidney when the doctor mentioned to me that because I also had a pancreas which had failed, I would qualify for a multiple organ list, which halved the time. So being from a BAME community, my waiting time at that point was between 3 and 5 years. But by joining this multiple organ list, it would cut it by half. I was fortunate enough to only do this for 6 months. And I had a 14-hour operation for a new kidney and a new pancreas. And I was in hospital for approximately 4 months. But since that day, 5 years ago, I've been insulin-free and fortunately enough, complication-free, and everything's in good working order.
Lonyo, did your kidney and pancreas come from the same person? Is that how it works?
Yes. So I did. Why didn't I know about the pancreas operation transplant before? And he said, if we'd given out just pancreas operations, we'd have a queue to here in the moon and back again. So they only do it if you have another organ which is not working. So, for example, a liver organ or another organ. And that's when they said it was a kind of new, fairly new. It's only about 20 years old. It's not, it's not out there in the masses, but it was called a multiple organ. So a new kidney in tandem with a new pancreas. That's what I received from the same deceased person who was 18 who deceased.
Do any of our panelists have any questions for Lonyo? No.
Lonyo, hi, good evening. My name is Della. Lonyo, do you think that, I was listening to Ace as well, do you think as a community, we need to raise a lot more awareness of diabetes within the Black community? Because obviously I'm listening to both of you, and that's what kind of led to your kidney disease. So do we need to kind of go back a little bit, go back into the community and raise more awareness of diabetes?
You there, Della?
Impact?
Yeah. So basically, Lonyo, did you hear?
I caught the first part about being from the Caribbean, Afro-Caribbean community and being diabetics.
Yeah. Della asked if we should raise more awareness in the community about diabetes.
Absolutely, because it creeps up on us. We have because of our, let's say, diet, it's very rich, oily foods. And I mean, mine was hereditary. At the time I caught diabetes when I was 21. I was, fully sportive and active, didn't drink, didn't smoke. But the awareness of diabetes, it was something old people got. I was 21 when I got it. I didn't ever think it would affect me. And that's why I was in denial for at least 10 years. And then with the onslaught of complications, people don't realize, especially in our community, that diabetes is a multiple silent killer. It first gets you with regards to your weight and your sugar intake, then it goes after your organs, it goes after your eyesight. It's a bit of a master of illnesses. It goes after so many different things. And absolutely raised the awareness. I'd never heard of diabetes until my father got it when I was 17, 18. I'd never heard of it. So yeah, we absolutely should. In answer to your question, Bella, the awareness should be raised so much more, because we don't realize how prone we are just because of our diet as a basic danger. It's our diet that we eat these foods which are quite rich and prepared with oil and so forth.
Thank you. That's very important, because I think that's for us as an organisation is the next stage to kind of go back a step and raise awareness of diabetes and high blood pressure. Those two, because those are the two main causes of kidney disease within our community. So we need to raise a lot more awareness so we can try and prevent that in the first place. So thank you so much.
Can we bring in Ace to tell your story? You gave us a hint earlier, but what's it like? Sorry, Mr. B, I'll come to you in a second, because I want to get both sides. So Ace. You're
on mute.
Yeah.
Ace, you're the last person I expect to get that wrong.
No, I've been on Zoom since like 2 o'clock this afternoon. But yeah, so yeah, I was diagnosed with renal failure in 2018, and yeah, I'm super active. I work every day. I'm a daytime radio presenter. I'm on the radio now 6 days a week, and I DJ, active DJ, and I'd like all of these different things. And I'm on dialysis for 4.5 hours, 3 times a week as well. And it just, the impact it has on your life is, it's I can't even describe it. Like, I have to basically base the way that I live on these 3 hospital sessions a week. So that means, like, can you come here? Well, let me just work out if I can make it to the hospital in time and back, and can't go on holiday, can't literally, there's so many things that I've had to sacrifice as a result of this situation I'm in. And I think for me, in regards to like how I've handled it, I would say not in the best way. Like when I first got diagnosed, I was like, okay, this is something that I'm going to deal with on my own. I'm going to like basically be on dialysis for a little while, and then hopefully I'll get a phone call, I'll have my transplant, and then I'll just go back to my normal way of living. But the truth is, like, it's not that. Like, we do have to be having these conversations. This is my 3rd year of being on dialysis, and I'll be honest, it's only like maybe the last 2 or 3 months is when I've wanted to start talking to family members about organ donation and possibly being a donor for me. But before that, I was dead set against asking anybody for anything. I don't know if that's a black male thing or a pride thing, or just like I'm not wanting to be anyone's burden. I think that's also a conversation that we should be having as well, because although there are people that are not willing to donate, I also feel like there are patients that are not willing to ask. And I was definitely one of those patients that was just like, look, and even when people were coming up to me and like, look, well, how can I get tested? I was like, oh, let's just wait and see what happens. Let's wait and see what happens. And here I am 3 years later, and I'm still in the same situation. So I feel like there's loads of different things as to why I believe, loads of things that I feel like we could talk about. Definitely, like there is a situation in the Black community. It's a very taboo subject. I'm still trying to work out if it's cultural or if it's religious, or if we don't know. Like, I feel like this is what this conversation is about today. But there's also, as somebody that's going through it at the moment, I know I have to play my part in not being as open. I'm a person that's got a platform. Like, I'm not a super celebrity, but a lot of people know who I am. And it took me ages to even bring this to the forefront. I was just going to handle it on my own. I didn't even tell my workplace that I had renal failure until about maybe 8 months into dialysis, when it was a situation where I was like, look, I can't do this because this is what's going on. And I think that, I know that's just not me. I know there's people like that, like me, that are, and again, it might just be a pride thing. I don't know if it's a black male thing. But I do feel like we all need to talk. It's a conversation that needs to happen from patients as well as the Black community and people that can be donors as well.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, so just before you come back in, Lonya, just DJ Mr. P, you wanted to ask a question in relation to Lonya, which hopefully has a knock-on effect in terms of what Ace was talking about. Just want to give you the platform for a second.
Yeah. Thanks very much for having me on, inviting me on today. I really do appreciate that. Big props to the ACLT. Firstly, I wanted to add to, or respond rather, to Della's question to Lonyo. In that, I think one of the biggest issues we have, and I think this is more of a general point that also in effect touches on what Ace has also said as well, and that is I'm very much in agreement with what Lonyo has said, in that there is a lack of awareness. I think that's missing. There's a huge gaping hole that's missing within our community, and awareness definitely is something that needs to be raised. And as Ace was saying, I think it's a cultural thing. I don't think it's an African thing or a West Indian thing or even a male thing. I think it's a cultural thing, and there are certain conditions or diseases that are in our community that are taboo and that we don't want to talk about. And mental health is a huge one. I know that's not what we're dealing with today, but what's happening here today and what we're dealing with, the organ donation and what Lonyo has been through and what Ace is going through at the moment, okay, it has an impact psychologically, yeah? So you have one condition which has a knock-on effect with another condition. So I think raising what's happening here today is a conversation that needs to happen far more often and on far more platforms to raise awareness. And this isn't a problem, I think, that many people may not agree with me, but I don't think it's a problem that we can be looking to other people to solve. It's our problem. We have to deal with it.
Yes, we do. And this is why we're having this webinar today.
Amen. So that's why I said props to the ACLT.
So take it further, because you mentioned there's a cultural, ethnicity side of things. I'm going to bring in faith, because faith, as you know, especially to the African and the Caribbean community, is so intrinsically linked to our development as human beings and our journey. It's intertwined. So I just want to bring in Pastor Ian Sweeney. From a faith point of view, from one of the leading churches out there, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, what is the view on organ donation?
Yeah, thanks very much. Within the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we are very much pro organ transplantation. In fact, the Seventh-day Adventist Church in one of the hospitals, and maybe Dr. Stevens and Nurse Ditchfield would be aware, I think it was back in the 80s, Seventh-day Adventist Hospital in California performed, I think it was a transplant of a baboon's heart into a baby. So, organ, I forgot her name, Baby Ray, I think it was, but that was back in the 80s. So as a church, as a faith group, we don't have a problem with organ donation. Having said that, that's not to say every part of the 20 whatever million worldwide community is actually supportive of organ donation. And I think what DJ Ace had said there is so important about having the conversations in platforms like this, but even more importantly within our families, because I would have to say that my father was more an influence upon me in organ donation than even my faith, even though my faith has been very strong to me. And my dad was one, he died 2013. He could talk about death very openly, because he was of the point talking about something doesn't lead to the event. And people are hesitant, within the faith, well, within all communities. Oh, should we make a will? No, if you make a will, you're going to die tomorrow. And now I would say that is just bare foolishness. you know, but the reality is, when I see death and we're not prepared for death, and it's not a comfortable conversation. I have served in chaplaincy role and going into hospitals and into hospices and meeting with the dying. It's hard to talk with folk and family about death and about the reality. Every one of us on this Zoom screen, we're all going to die. We can deny it and think, well, it's not going to happen to me. But the reality is it's going to come our way. But the best thing we can do is prepare ourselves for death, for having uncomfortable conversations, making wills, and just seeing that we can be a benefit to our community going on. I mean, my dad was so practical. He really wanted to be buried on his allotment so that the potatoes and the marrows could grow, kind of thing, you know. And we're like, Dad, you know, that can't work. That just doesn't happen. But I also think that also having the conversations, we do need the education as well, because my dad had type 2 diabetes, for example, lost an eye through it and all sorts, had to give up driving early in his 60s, when he was in his 60s. And you know, and I just thought, as a young black guy growing up and seeing all my family, every one of the region age type 2 diabetic, and like Lonyo said, I said, boy, that's coming my way, you know, because it's supposed to be hereditary. Then I heard a guy talk about, no, it isn't. You can actually deal with type 2 with your lifestyle. I'm like, really? Seriously? Straight up? And that's the thing, that why we have to have the conversations as well as the education. And so okay, coming back to the faith, I can't say that I speak, and I would never pretend that I speak for all of the faith community, of all of the Christian community. I'm not even speaking for all Seventh-day Adventists, of which I represent. But within our faith community and in many other Christian faith community, organ donation isn't seen as something that is anti-faith. And in fact, in Christianity, part of the big thing is, you know, a God or a savior who actually gives his body and blood, you know, and we call it the Lord's Supper or communion and so on and so forth. So this aspect of giving in death is, for me, just part of what faith can be as well.
It's interesting to hearing that from a faith point of view. Lonyo, you wanted to, before I bring in the physicians, Angela and Dr. Mike Stevens, Lonyo, you wanted to come in and say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to Ace, and unfortunately, me and Ace haven't managed to connect on a few times. I've reached out to him, but his story, if you remove the names, is exactly the same as mine. I didn't tell any member of my family. I didn't tell a few of my friends, maybe one of my friends who had to take me to hospital. This situation, not wanting to be a burden, this situation of we've all got problems, I just have to get on and deal with it. My father, my father was a neurologist, he was a brain surgeon, and he was a diabetic, but he was passed away, so my main source of information, if you like, I couldn't tap into. But this thing of we must straighten up and crack on with it at all costs was exactly the position I was in. Nobody knew that I had it, maybe 3 people. And like Ace said, I'm not a celebrity, but I'm quite well known. And out of 3,000 people, if you like, only 2 or 3 knew. And this whole thing of we just have to get on with it and carry this load and not tell people we're ill, not want to burden anybody. My brothers, again, like Ace, family members offering for organ donation, and I turned them and I said, no, I'm sure it will be all right. You know, it's mad that we've got family members that are asking to help, and yet they've nothing but good intentions. But again, I'm scared, because if I do take that organ, does that put them in a compromising position? Because I was ill, not really educated on the whole illness. How bad do I feel? Not only have I put myself in danger, now I've put my younger brother. You know, I didn't even want my younger brothers to suggest it. You know, they're 10 years younger than me, they're 20s, they got their life ahead of them. So I just wanted to reinforce that point of,
Thank you.
What it is, we just don't want to be we have this thing of, let's not be a burden, let's crack on and deal with it. And that's exactly what I did. I got a dog and dealt with it. It's mad. And Orin and Bev, you've met the dog, and that's how I got to deal with it. So yeah, I wanted to reinforce the point that Ace was making. You know?
Thank you very much. This leads on to living donation, which I'm going to bring Della in a second. But before I get to you, Della, I want to, for everyone that's watching this, to really get a proper understanding what happens behind the scenes in terms of when that moment comes and someone, like one of us ends up in intensive care unit and the decision is made by a separate team that's looking after you. This decision is made about, and the question is asked about organ donation to your loved ones. And I want to bring in Angela and then bring in Dr. Mike Stevens to give us a real insight of your roles, what actually happens, so that our audience can take this away and get and connect this deeply with their family and the wider community that probably don't have a real understanding about what's involved. Angela.
Thanks, Owen. So specialist nurses, we work with doctors and nurses on the intensive care unit. And like you said, we're a separate team and we come in at the end of life when that decision's been made that that person isn't going to survive. And we want to just make sure that every family is given that opportunity for their loved one to be a donor. And, you know, it's good end of life care. So we go and speak to the family, spend some time with them, try and establish what it is the loved one was like, and if they would want to be an organ donor. And we have really good long discussions with families at such a difficult time. It's so difficult for them, you know, thinking about this. And like we've said and alluded to in past conversations, if you've never had that conversation and you've never talked about it, really it's not a good time then to be coming in when you're, you know, absolutely devastated and losing someone you love, because you might not know what they would have wanted or you've never had that discussion. So that's why it's so important to talk about this. So we do spend time with families and then we'll discuss what they would want, and we obviously work with the family. And obviously the law has changed and we establish if they've been on the organ donor register or if they've made a decision not to donate. And then if, you know, we work with that family and respect their wishes. So even if that family really can't agree to organ donation, then we respect that and respect, but we'll still provide good end of life care and support the family. But if they do then decide that they want the loved one to be organ donors, or the loved one had already said that, then we work to make sure that that happens respectfully, dignified. We make sure we work well with the transplant team so that we get someone who's waiting for a transplant, we get that match. Continuously communicating and working with supporting that family at that time. We've got to collect lots of information so that the transplants are safe and that they work well. And then we make sure that the specialist teams, like Mr. Stevens, would come to the hospital and perform that operation. And then after that operation, then we make sure that we care for that body and that person, and any wishes that that family would want, if they wanted to spend time with them, whatever it is, we make sure that we can try and fulfill that. So, you know, it's quite a long process. It's not like it happens straight away, but we make sure that the family is paramount to that, and respecting the loved one's wish, working with them, making sure we're providing that end of life care for them that they would want, and getting that I know it sounds bad, but positive outcome for them, because there's nothing else that's positive out of this. But if they can then go on to save someone else's life, that's really amazing thing that their loved one has done. That's a lasting memory, something they're really proud of. And it's just such a humbling job to work with such people that are so selfless, that they give, you know, their organs at the time of the death. So, you know, that's my role. And obviously working closely with Mr. Stevens, who I'm sure will come in now and talk about his role in this.
Thank you, Angela. I just want to say quickly, Lonyo has got to leave, so he just wants to say a departing word.
Yeah, I just want to say, Lauren and Bev, I mean, great work that you keep doing. Always invite me on these platforms. If there's anyone who has any questions at any given time, please get my details from Oren and Bev. I think it's only fair that being someone who's gone through it, I'm happy to share any experiences, and I'm not just walk the walk. I can actually talk the talk, because I'm out on the other side. And so everything you expect to go through, and there is a happy ending. You know, I was single when I went into this situation. I came out the other end. I've got 3 young girls who are under the age of 4. I'm boxing, I'm fully healthy.
Busy,
So,
that's for sure.
yeah.
Lonnie, I've got a question for you before you leave. This is from John. He says, if you could send a message to your donor's family, what would you say?
I would say there are words to describe creating a life, which is beautiful and great. There are no words used to describe saving a life. And so I really wouldn't know what to say to them because they saved my life. I really wouldn't.
Says it all.
Apart from, but and I remember every time I celebrate the day I got my transplant, somebody out there, because you don't get to know who people are mourning the loss of them.
Yeah.
Like I said,
but Lonyo, they're also celebrating what their loved one did for you.
They say I helped create 3 other lives.
Yeah, exactly.
And Angela, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, Lonya, I just wanted to say, have you written to your donor, Lonya?
Well,
Or thought about it?
I thought about it straight away, and I'm what's the word I'm looking at? I'm at odds with myself, because if I write, do I remind them of their son's passing and maybe sad memories? And if I don't, they're probably wondering what's happened. I think the story of me maybe creating my 3 daughters' lives might give them some joy, but I have to be sensitive to what they might be going through. So it's some days I'm like, yeah, let me get on. And I have started writing and I stop and I just think, what's the best thing to do? I think I'm still juggling with it because I don't want to remind them of any sadness.
Just to let you know, honestly, the donors that I work with, they really love receiving letters, and you won't remind, they'll never forget that. They're never going to forget that they've lost someone,
Lonyo, send them a picture of you and your babies. That will say it all.
Yeah, pictures of
Thanks, Lonyo.
Thank you.
Wants to direct questions to me, I'm happy to help whenever.
Thank you. Thanks very much. We'll speak soon, Lonyo.
Sorry, guys.
Can I bring in Dr. Mike Stevens? I was on a webinar with him a few months ago, and he described what happens when someone donates their organs, and it left such a mark on me that I had to have him here for this webinar to describe for you all what he does and how he does it, cause and effect. Dr. Mike Stevens.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for the invite to be part of this evening. It is a great honour. I really feel strongly that part of my role is to try and help people to understand that this is an emotional topic. We all know that, but I want you all to see and to understand that the people who are involved in this from a professional perspective are the same as everybody else. And you may look at the screen and say, well, there's 2 white people here who are representing the profession, but that, we have a diverse workforce within the organ donation and transplant community. I can tell you I'm the only white British surgeon in my transplant unit, for example. It just so happens that Oren and I met, and that's why I've been invited along here tonight. But the process of organ donation and transplant is incredibly emotional, and it affects all of us, including those of us who see this and deal with this on a daily basis. And maybe if I just describe to you the process of the organ donation from a deceased donor from my perspective as a surgeon. So I'm based in Cardiff in South Wales, but our team covers the whole of the country from an organ retrieval perspective. So when I'm on call for organ retrieval, we wait until we get a call, and then we're asked to leave the hospital within an hour. We go out with all of our kit, the whole team. I take an assistant surgeon with me and 2 nurses and all of our equipment. We go in an ambulance car to wherever it is that we need to go. And we meet the specialist nurse who's in that hospital. And when we get there, we're told all of the information about the organ donor. We've told all of their story. We've told how they've died. We've told all of their past medical history. And we discuss the practical aspects of how we're going to do the procedure. And we make our way into the operating theatre. And when we're in the operating theatre, the process is, it's quite difficult to describe just how respectful everything is when you go into an operating theatre for organ donation. It's a very somber atmosphere, as you can imagine. And, you know, this isn't something that you get used to as a surgeon. You don't get used to seeing people who've died. You don't get used to hearing about untimely deaths and knowing what their families wanted to happen after the donor's death. You don't get used to that at all. And the only thing that really carries me through all of this is a strong feeling of responsibility that this is something that I can do to help the family, the person who has died, to carry through their wishes, and then of course to transplant those organs, you know, to be part of that process later on down the line, that somebody else can have some benefit from this terrible situation. When we've got ourselves set up in theatre and the organ donor is brought into theatre, the first thing that we'll do once we've got our checks sorted is we have something called a moment of honour. And the moment of honour is a brief pause, a reflection, a thanks to the donor and their family for allowing this process to continue, to allow them life to continue. And that it's quite difficult to describe how it feels to be there in that moment, because the technical aspects of organ retrieval are quite complex. It's a difficult operation actually, and you have to have you have to be in the right zone to be able to do that kind of surgical procedure. And of course, there is a bit of pressure because there's recipients who are waiting for organs in other hospitals around the country who are dependent on you to get this right. So it's a demanding technical procedure. But that moment of honour that we do before we start the organ retrieval really brings the whole thing back to reality, to life. You know, this is what it's all about. It adds a lot of pressure, I have to say, because, you know, one of the things about being a surgeon is you have to have a degree of being able to step away from emotion when you're operating. None of us do our best when we're emotional. And this goes back to what Angela was saying earlier about making it clear what your decision is about organ donation, because don't expect your family, however well they know you, to make good decisions when you've died, because they will be so emotional and so upset that there's a good chance that they won't make a good decision. The same thing applies to us as surgeons and nurses who are operating in this environment, that we have to have this way of kind of compartmentalizing our feelings and our emotions to be able to get through that procedure. But we do it, and you know, and there's lots of other things that happen around the donation procedure that you know, that are all part of the process if families want it and if donors want it. So it's not unusual for us to have music playing the favorite song of the donor. It's not unusual for us to have pictures of the donor or the family in the theatres with us. We don't mind those things. If that's what people want, if that's what families want, then we'll go through with all of those things. And if you ever see any documentaries of how the specialist nurses look after the donors and their families prior to the actual procedure, please take the opportunity, because it's just wonderful to see how people are treated, how they're helped to understand the process of death, how they're helped to have the memories that they want, to get handprints and locks of hair and things like that, if that's what individual families want. And so I suppose what I'm trying to get across to you is that I'm the same as you. You know, I'm a person, I've got loved ones. I feel death in the same way as you do. And I'm part of this process, and I promise you, I do it in a hugely respectful way. And I'm in absolute awe of people who allow organ donation to happen. And I'll take every opportunity to tell people about that if I'm allowed to. So thank you for giving me the opportunity tonight.
Well, thank you. Before I bring in Della, just wanted to, just from the panelists, do you have any particular questions for either Angela or Mike in terms of what you've seen and heard just now before I go to Della to talk about the living side, which links into a side that Mike mentioned. You talked about deceased, but you also deal with the living donors as well. But any questions before I hand over to Della?
Can I just say something? I just want to say in response to Angela and Mike that I think a lot of people assume that when they are asked to donate loved ones' organs, that it's a case of that we just want to do this and can we get it quickly so that we can just save this other person's life, and that people feel that maybe there is no care and emotion behind what's happening with their loved ones. And I think you both really so eloquently explained to people that are listening just how much care and attention is taken for the donor as well as for the recipient. And Mike, yeah, you spoke about the moment of honor, which just completely,
that's what got me.
Made my heart just swell, because I think these are the sides of the work that you do that people, obviously we don't see this. We get these messages in WhatsApp and various other places telling us that they just want to take your organs. These are the messages actually that people need to see and hear. It's a shame there's not more people tuned in tonight, but hopefully the 105 that are logged in at the moment, those people will take what they've heard today and spread it amongst their networks, because this is so powerful. I'm on the organ donor register and I've never had any doubts. I hope that other people will follow our lead, the majority of people that are on this call, and that we can spread this message, because really I'd need to see Ace, or Ashley as I call him, because I treat him like my son. I want to see him to be able to take his children on holiday and to be able to just get back to his normal life. So I just want to say on behalf of me and Orin, thank you both for what you do.
Yeah. And a couple of questions in the Q&As that we're going to come back to yourself, Mike and Angela. But I want to bring in Della, because Della represents the living donor side, the other side of the coin of organ donation, which sometimes a lot of people don't appreciate enough. But it's actually a beacon of light and a hope of, especially in our community, for people to understand that you can do something, even as a living person, that is equally as powerful as someone who's passed away. Della.
Hi, thank you. Bevan, thank you for having me. My name is Della Idol, and I'm the founder of Gold, Gift of Living Donation. And I set this up after coming forward as a living donor for my brother. For me, it was a no-brainer. But one of the things when I was going through that whole process, and I was telling people within the Black community that I wanted to be a living donor. And there is actually a question in the chat, which I've answered, is that a lot of people thought I was talking about deceased donation because they hadn't heard about living donation at all. So their first response was like, no, I'm not doing that. You've got to be joking. Black people don't donate their organs. But then this was my brother. I didn't want him to spend years waiting for a transplant. And if I know that I can live with one kidney, why not donate it? And it was interesting to hear the number of people that said, you know what, actually, Della, yeah, no, I can do that. I can donate to a loved one, my brother, my sister. So that kind of actually showed me that I think as a community, we are very community-based. And it's almost to say, well, I will do this because one, I know I'm helping a loved one. And actually, I do know where my kidney's going. And I think that is the difference between why we have a lot more Black people who are more willing to become living donors than actually sign up to the organ donor register. Because for Black people, we are community-based, and it is a question of, well, I'm helping a loved one. And as Beverly said, we don't want to see our loved ones spend years on dialysis. But today, I also want to talk about, and you take this opportunity to celebrate actually the contribution that Black people have made to organ donation and transplantation. We have over 500 Black living donors across the UK. And when you often hear, well, Black people don't come forward to donate, that number might surprise you. You might think, okay, there might be a couple, but actually no, today we have about 560 Black living donors across the UK. These are wives, husbands, brothers, sisters, siblings, friends, parents, just ordinary people like me and you who have decided, you know what, I've got 2 kidneys, I only need one, I'm going to donate one to a loved one. And what they have done is that they have given their loved one a new lease of life. I heard Ace when he said that he can't go on holidays, he can't do this, and that is what dialysis does. You have to work your life around it. But when you are able to give your loved one the gift of life and give them a second lease of life, they'll be off on holiday, they will climb mountains. We've had people who have donated to their daughter. The year after, they were climbing Kilimanjaro. So for me, that is the benefit of coming forward as a living donor. But the good thing about living donors is that they've got unique and powerful stories that actually are empowering people like Ace to have that conversation with their loved ones. And this group of living donors that we've got, as I said, 500. We've got a community of about 30 who have said to themselves that, look, we need to give back to our community. I heard that somebody said that it's our responsibility. Yes, NHSBT is there, but it's our responsibility as a community to be able to say, well, what can I do? So on the back of COVID, we used to go into hospitals and we used to talk to patients face to face, especially new patients who were newly diagnosed, who thought, well, what am I going to do? And I've heard this time and time again of a lot of patients within the Black community who are in denial. So we used to go into the hospitals, talk to patients, tell them that, look, there are other Black living donors available that they can talk to. Then COVID hit and we had to kind of quickly adapt and change what we were doing. So we set up a telephone scheme whereby patients can actually talk to other living donors, other recipients, do you know what, who looks like them, who sound like them, who understand where they're coming from. And I have to say that has really changed the dynamics because they're just hearing firsthand from somebody who looks like them, their experience of living donation, how it was for them. And what it has done, it's just really empowered them and it's encouraged them to say, you know what, I can actually go back home. I can actually sit down with my friends and family because now I have that information. Because that's another key thing. We had an event and it is that fear of the unknown. I'm asking my loved one to do something that I really don't know much about. So you stop. But if you talk to somebody who's gone through the whole process before and after, it just gives you that confidence to be able to go back to your family.
So thank you, Della. I mean, what you've highlighted and the numbers prove it. Because if I look back on 2019 to 2020, there were more living, it's relative, but there were more living Black donors than deceased donors. And the 13 for this last year that I quoted in the presentation, again, the majority are living Black donors than deceased. So it goes back to this question of, you've highlighted there is hope on the living side, and there's a lot of work to be done, but there's hope. But on the deceased side, on this anniversary of the year change, and I open it up to everyone. What is the problem within our community?
Can we talk to Mr. P?
Yeah.
Because Mr. P, you have a profile on, is it WhatsApp and text,
yeah,
where you send out messaging and things. And one of the things we noticed was that there was messaging going out from your platforms which were against organ donation.
The opt-out.
The opt-out.
Yeah.
The opt-out, which took place this day last year. Can you give us anything that explains what is going on there and what your view is?
There was obviously a demand.
Yeah.
So I just wonder, where was that coming from? Because we all need to sort of work out what's in the mindset of people a year ago and where are we now going forward.
Okay. How that actually began, I received a mess. I send out over 1 million messages a year on SMS. I've got SMS platforms, email platforms, and different social media platforms. And I received a message on, I think on WhatsApp last year regarding the opt-out, okay? And for me, the message basically, from what I can recall, it said something about the government want your organs, etc., etc. So personally, for me, I don't actually have an issue with organ donation. I really don't. Who knows? I may need a donation myself one day. Okay, but what it is, it's for me, it's more about the mistrust of the government and the NHS and how they do things. I mean, I've got a niece who's a nurse. I've got a younger sister who's a nurse. I've got an older sister who's a senior nurse. Okay, so I know a little bit about what goes on, you know, within hospitals in the NHS. And here in the UK, for me personally, what I find is the government are not always upfront about what it is they do and how they do what they do. I mean, we've seen that over the last year, well, you know, with COVID. It's been a complete, you know, mess and catastrophe in the handling of things and the secrets, and they haven't been 100% upfront, or they've been disingenuous with how they've put certain things across. So when I saw this message, okay, I thought to myself, well, I need to alert my community about this, and they can do their due diligence. They can find out for themselves, go out and do their research and find out, you know, what the situation is. And even though, as I said, as a you know, a person myself, I don't actually have an issue with organ donation. I really don't, because for me, the whole thing around organ donation, it's about love. It's about humanity. It's being able to keep somebody else, whether or not you know them, if you're able to spare a part of your body, which in the case of the deceased, you're not going to be using. You're not going to be using it. So if you've already died, I don't actually have an issue with somebody being able to continue their life with using one of my organs. I don't have a problem with that. Yeah, it's just, sorry, go on.
So I was just going to say, so for others to come in as well, what do people feel is the, yes, mistrust is high, whether it's organ, blood, stem cell, COVID-19, vaccine.
Yeah.
What is it? I'll open this up to everyone. What is it that's creating this in our community? Whether you be Caribbean or African, there's something there that's this we don't want to step forward. What is it?
There is, and I think just calling a spade and being straight about things. The bottom line is racism for me. Yeah. For Stephen Lawrence is a huge example. Look, still going on, and they haven't dealt with things the way that they should have been dealt with. So once you've got that kind of undercurrent that's always been there here in the UK, you're going to find there's a mistrust of authority. Period. Doesn't matter if it's the government. Doesn't matter if it's a local government. Doesn't matter if it's the NHS. It doesn't matter if it's the police. Makes no difference. Yeah, there's an issue. There is an issue, and until, as we were saying earlier on, until these issues are addressed in the open, okay, and dealt with, it's going to be problems.
Can I open this up to Angela from a special nurses organ donation, SNODS, at that vital point of asking the question of, say, an Asian family or Black family? Does the issues that we're talking about in terms of the mistrust, does that come through, or is it more a case that it's more there's a more emotional or spiritual problem, language, culture? What are you finding?
Mistrust, yeah, definitely, from certain communities, but I do think that we've moved on from, like, when I started in this role 10 years ago, going into families. You might go into a room from a family from a different ethnic background than yourself, and they've had a huge family, and you'd ask the question about organ donation, and it'd be like, no, it's not, it's against our religion, for instance, and we'd sort of say, okay, thank you, and we'd sort of leave. Whereas now conversations have moved on, we've got more information, we're becoming more confident to explore that, we're meeting more diverse families, so we're getting more confidence in that. But there is a lot of around spirituality, religion. That's one of the huge ones. About not having the body cut, that's a huge one for us.
And what do you say in that situation, Angela? If someone says to you, well, you know, we don't want our loved one's body to be messed around with, what is the answer that you give to that?
Well, it's difficult to take that but we try and explore what is it, right? So what, you don't want the body cut, and like, tell me more about that. What is it around cutting the body? And, you know, is it because they've already died, or what? It's because this is an operation just like any other operation. We treat that patient just like we treat a living patient. And so we try and have that open conversation and dialogue, and try and really dig down to what it is that this, you know, the family don't want. And a lot of the time it's because it's, maybe they'll say, I don't want the body cut because it's against our religion, or, you know, and then again, that's difficult for me as a white woman to then say, oh, I'm not from that religion, you know, but we can explore it, and we bring people in, the chaplains, and we get support, outside faith leaders, whatever that family wants, and we try and have open dialogue with that family and really explore it.
But I also know, Angela, and you could explore this a bit further for me, you know, too, that the special nurses or organization, you're trying your utmost best to get more diversity in the ranks, so that if it's a Caribbean or African or South Asian family at that point, if there's someone that looks like them, speaks like them, culturally, spiritually, language-wise, that could be an extra, that could be the tipping point for some families. If the person that's speaking to them about this is someone that's from their background, and I know you're trying to work to get more recruitment through the ranks to get that mix.
Yeah, definitely. We're working really hard, but, you know, ACLT is helping us. We've got lots of stakeholders helping us to try and diversify our workforce. We're not as diverse as the transplant teams and as specialist nurses. And the nurses that we do have from diverse backgrounds, they're helping us because they sort of recognise that as well. So I was speaking to one of the SNODs who's a black nurse, and she said to me, she came into this role because she saw that there were no black nurses in this job. And she really wants to change that, and she wants to help support us do that. But she said, you know, again, from her community, she got the WhatsApp messages, the government's taking your organs, and, you know, she's trying to work hard in her community to do that. But you know, that's what we need to do. We need to really diversify our workforce, not only for that reason, but for the experiences and the cultural and the views that other people bring into the organisation. But it's really difficult, you know, if people don't want to donate their organs, they don't really want to work for us as well. It's like really something, but we're really trying hard to do that, and, you know, trying to get across the message that the job is so amazing. It's not like any other job, and just so special to do it.
And of course, Dr. Mike Stevens, in your role, you don't see color. It's just organs to help save lives. So color doesn't come in. You're in that unique role. You're colorblind.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's easy in some ways when you operate to be like that, because obviously it's a different emphasis completely. But there are, you know, there's massive diversity within our transplant teams. I think, as Angela says, on the organ donation team side, it's a slightly different story, and, you know, working hard to try and recruit more, but it's a problem. But within our transplant team, as I say, we're a team of 8 surgeons in Cardiff, and I'm the only white British amongst them, you know, and that is very common amongst transplant teams all around the country and organ retrieval teams. One thing I did want to say, I mean, I don't know and can't explain the reasons why there's hesitancy amongst individual different communities and cultures. But what I would say is that the one thing that I can promise people is that the process of the looking after an individual before their death is not influenced in the slightest by them being organ donors or being on the organ donor register. There's 3 very distinct parts of the process. The first part is looking after that person until there's absolutely no further options for looking after them in life. Only then is organ donation considered. And the organ donation process takes a little time, actually. It's not something that happens quickly. It does take some time. It needs to, for the process to accumulate the information and to make sure that we can get the organs to the right people. There's a third process then, which is the transplant, which is entirely separated from the donation process again. So there's absolutely no link between transplantation and the life of the person before they died. There's very distinct separate blocks that stop those from running into each other, and making sure that there can never be any conflict of interest between any of those things. I have never been on an intensive care unit and looked after a donor in life. That's not my role. I will not go anywhere near it. I have no role in that. So I cannot ever influence that part of the process. So I understand and hear frequently concerns about the idea of tempting fate, and somehow if you're on the organ donor register, people won't try hard enough to look after you in life and all the rest of it. But it absolutely does not happen, because they're completely separated processes.
Pastor Ian Sweeney, what role does faith have in terms of helping not only those from the faith, but the wider community in terms of getting to understand and appreciate the urgency of the need to relate to the high demand?
I think we have a responsibility to look at the wider needs of our community, and being prepared to give of ourselves to a wider community. And as I said, it is something that has to be talked about before, not best waited till, in the hospital or in the hospice or what have you. We've got to engage in it. I think, Mr. P was quite right. I think racism does run deep in some of this stuff. And it, and it's not just racism, it's racism attached with consent, issues of consent, because, in my lifetime, I can remember the Alder Hayes organ scandal, and, and those kind of issues come, and, people are fearful, and, we may not be experts in history, but we remember those kind of things. And then, you look into African American history and Henrietta Lacks and her cells, which are being used and so on, lack of consent. And I think we have to, and so we've got to fight against those aspects of history as well, and to give out reassuring messages that no, mistakes have been made. There were times when consent was not sought. That is not the case now. And with respect to faith, as I said, I can't change, and I have to respect a person's belief and a faith, belief. But, for me personally, I believe that there is life after death, and most religions believe in some sort of life after death. And to be honest with you, in my faith, I believe that God has a better new body, prepared for me. And to be honest, I really wouldn't want to be taking my bad eyesight and, and all my bald head, I would like to have a new body. So my faith has got that covered. But if my insides can help somebody else at death, that they can have a little bit more of this life, it ain't no worry to me, because I believe in a God that can, recreate me new. So, all's good that way. But I admit, not everybody sees it my way.
I'm glad you said that, because one of the big things that we do here is people being concerned that if they donate their organs, that they will not go to their maker whole. So I think you've just explained perfectly, actually, reincarnation, coming back, however you term it, we come back in a completely new body. Ace?
Yeah, I just want to, before you
just,
come in,
just a second, Dad, just a sec.
Just Ace, you've heard
Ashley?
all this. You've heard all this. The hesitancy, the background, the history, as mentioned by Pastor Sweeney and Mr. P, the mistrust. You're in the middle wanting, and you've got two chances really. You've got the deceased side, you've got the living side, but you're still waiting 1 year after the change of law. How does this, looking forward, how does this make you feel in terms of the dynamics that are there right now into this second year with the COVID pandemic situation, that cloud that's always there? how are you feeling going forward for yourself and for the future of people in your situation?
I think when the change in the law happened, I was very positive. I thought that I'd get a call quite soon. Obviously, COVID happened, so it didn't happen that way. I'm still very positive. But yeah, like I see all of the messages. I've sometimes seen the WhatsApp messages, and I also know and hear the mistrust. Again, we spoke about, we see it with the COVID jabs, like we are the lowest in uptake for COVID jabs and that's all down to mistrust as well. So like the mistrust, I think is strong, and I think it's going to be very difficult. Even though, like, even hearing the doctor speak, like it's amazing. I wish everybody could hear that, but I think it's gonna be hard to reverse that in our community. I think it is. If I'm totally honest, I think that mistrust is deep rooted, and it's from everything from the Windrush scandal to police brutality to everything. And again, like all of these things are not like, the police are not the NHS, but it's all kind of interlinked. And there is a real like deep rooted mistrust in the system. And it will be very difficult to reverse that, unfortunately, even in a situation like mine. But the saddest thing about it is it's like us that, although we have the mistrust, we're the ones that are suffering because of our own mistrust. I've been on dialysis for 3 years, and I'm in a section where it's just me and a few Asian people, and I'm seeing white patients come in for a few months, and then they come in and they have their dialysis, and then they're gone because they're getting transplants, they're in and out. Whereas we've been here looking at each other for the last 3 years, and that's sad. Do you know what I'm saying? So I feel like, I don't know how we reverse the mistrust, but I just feel like more conversations like this. And again, it's not like and me as a black man, I know there's parts of the system that we shouldn't trust. I'll be honest, but I feel like this is something that we should really do our due diligence and really get the research and really like go out and do your own research, talk to people. And yeah, that's what I could really say on that.
Oh, no, thank you. And Della, you wanted to come in with your view.
Yeah, this was what actually for Pastor Sweeney. I would say about, especially in London, I would say about 30 to 40% of Black people in London are people of faith. We are Christians. I'm a person of faith myself. I personally feel the church have a fantastic platform, because on any given Sunday, you've got 2,000-3,000 people going to church. I honestly do think that we as Christians could do more. But what I would like to see is to maybe change the narrative slightly and see, really, for me, organ donation. We talk about the tithe, we talk about blessings and prosperity. Can we, as people of faith, people like yourself in those positions, let's change that narrative. Can we not tell our congregation that we lay down our life, and when we become organ donors, be it living or deceased, it is part of our giving. It's part of giving as well. So I do think that we, as people of faith, have that responsibility. We've heard about racism. Yes, it's there. But as a community, I do think, and especially the church, we have a fantastic platform. And I think we're not really using it. Every given Sunday, we've got a captive audience. What can we do?
Yeah, I do agree with you very much, Stella. I think the church could do so much more. The platform is there. They've got access to a huge section of the community, and I don't think the churches are doing enough. I just don't think they are. And I think there's one particular religion. They don't allow blood transfusions and such like. Is it Jehovah's? Yeah. That doesn't help. And how we're going to get through or get around that, I don't know. But definitely, I think a starting point would be the church. It would definitely be the church. And again, like, as I said before, this is our issue. It's our problem. Okay. I spend a lot of time in Africa. I'm in and out of Gambia all the time. And the biggest issues health-wise they have can be solved, I think, personally, like that. I'm not a doctor, but diabetes and high blood pressure. Okay, they have too much sugar and too much salt in their diet. Now, I know that may not be the only factors, but they don't help. They don't help the situation. And due to a lack of information and education that they're not getting, they keep drinking their attire. It's like syrup, and they put tons of salt in their food. So that isn't helping. And again, it's down to education, it's down to information and getting the word and the message out there to people so that we know what we're meant to know, and then we can, discern for ourselves and act accordingly.
Let me throw this one back at you. There's a question here that's been put in relation to personal responsibility and messaging, and someone says there needs to be an element of personal responsibility forwarding messages that you don't agree with. Okay, we understand that, or don't understand is wrong. We can't blame racism when this is literally a problem we can solve ourselves. So I suppose the question is being asked, should we be, and this goes to the same thing what's happening right now with the government and the back and forth, are they telling the truth, are they not telling the truth about COVID, the vaccines, travel, blah, blah, blah. I suppose in this context, when we send messages out about something that we may not agree with, is there an element of responsibility that we have to be very aware of and careful of the cause and effect?
Is that to me?
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's in response to the messages that went out via WhatsApp
and text.
Right, okay. Yeah, absolutely. One does have to take responsibility for any messages that go out. I agree, absolutely. However, there comes a point where people need to actually do their own research. Okay, and you can't just always go on everything that you hear. You do have to do your due diligence. You do have to find out exactly what is going on. Because had I not sent out that message, I may not be on this conference today. Yeah, and since then, or in yourself and I, we've had a couple of conversations, and I've worked with you. For how many years I've supported what you're doing. I'm 100% behind the two of you, the ACLT, and you know that at any time you can pick up the phone and either have a conversation with me or say, P, we're doing this. Can you get this out? Or P, can you help us with this or whatever? I've got no issue at all with yourselves or the work or the great work, that you've been doing all of this time. But yeah, getting back to your original question, yeah, people do need to be responsible for what they send out. Absolutely.
So another comment being made, this is to everyone really. Someone said mistakes have been made. That is not the case now. We as a community have to be more giving than taking when it comes to organ donation, because as the stats proved earlier when I put up that slide, only 13 Black people in the last year have donated an organ, either living or deceased. But I think it was close to 450, nearly 500 Black people are waiting. And also those that received in that same time, they got their organs. They're not from Asian people because their numbers are only just better than ours. So that means that those organs are coming, thankfully, coming from white people who just happen to match. But as Angela and Dr. Michael will highlight, the best matches are when the people have the same tissue type and come from the same blood, and the same blood group and have the same ethnicity. Ethnicity counts. And so there is this gap that's there at the moment where the supply is not meeting the demand. And it's the same thing happening in stem cell, bone marrow. It's the same thing happening on blood. But the most taboo one is this subject matter. And we really need to do more to be able to give ACE and others the chance of receiving what Lonyo got.
The chance of life.
Yeah, can I just, there is a one that's just come in, which I just want to put to Mike and to Angela. I have always been pro-organ donation and was on the register for 7 years, up until last year. My biggest worry is if I am in hospital, will I get the same resuscitation care once they know I am an organ donor? I have told those around me and written down that I do want to donate my organs, but I am uncomfortable with being on the register. Interesting one. And I think a lot of people feel that. So guys, over to you.
Well, I mean, that's a perfectly reasonable way of going about things, really. And I think that person's extremely responsible for considering this and for conveying their decision to their relatives, because that's the key thing here. You don't have to put your name on the organ donor register if for any reason you're uncomfortable with that. Your relative, it will be discussed with your relatives after your death. So if they know what it is you want, then that will be sufficient to allow that to happen. As I said earlier on, the link between donation and pre-death care in hospitals, they are totally and utterly unrelated. So whatever your decision is regarding organ donation, being for or against it will not influence. Nobody knows. There's no way of anybody knowing when you come into hospital whether you're on the organ donor register or not. It's only checked when the team who are looking after you have done everything that they can to save your life, and that when you cannot be saved. That's the first point that the organ donor register is checked. So no one would know. But I think that person's approach is very responsible, and encourage that. If you've got anxieties about the organ donor register, that's not an issue, but make sure your relatives and loved ones know what it is that your decision is.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things that's got to come out of today's
and Angela, do you have a view?
Yeah, totally agree. It's there's only us that check the register as well. It's not like the staff who's looking after the patient can actually go on the register and check it. We're guests in that hospital. We don't work for that hospital. We're not connected in any way. We're employed by NHS Blood and Transplant, and we're only invited in after that decision's been made by the doctors. And I've worked with many consultants, and I do know that they do absolutely everything they can. And when they get to the point when they can't save everybody, and then only after that are we invited in. And then that's only when we check the register, they can't access that.
Thank you very much. Let me just throw in a couple of questions which may not be on the, I don't think they're on the Q&A, but we've heard about them.
Have we answered all the questions?
Yeah, I'm going to come back to these in a second. There's a black market, as we know, out there for organs. How well regulated is the United Kingdom system in terms of not paying and buying organs? Because there's a feeling sometimes people think that there's a payment system going on, a black market. Is there such a thing in this country?
No, absolutely not. It's very, very careful regulation of organ donation. So living donation is perhaps the area where that's of most concern, really, people donating kidneys. And there is a process within the living donor process where there is what's called an independent assessment of the process. So the final point after the donor and the recipient has been signed off as physically fit enough to donate and to have the transplant, they have to meet an independent person who's separate from the transplant team, who will go through a variety of different questions to ensure three things. First off, to make sure the donor's fully informed of the process and understands the small risks that go with it. Secondly, to ensure there's no coercion. And thirdly, to make sure that there's no financial exchange. And it's illegal in virtually all countries in the world for organs to be exchanged for money.
And another question.
Yeah,
another question. Open casket. Can my loved one? Can we have an open casket if my loved ones donated their organs?
Yeah, that definitely can. Like we've already said, it's an operation just like a normal operation, and the incision is stitched up very delicately by Mr. Stevens and dressed accordingly, and then the patient is then dressed in whatever clothes they want, and they can have the open casket so they can see them. So we regularly, families will regularly come back after the operation. They might come back to the hospital and spend some time straight after the operation with the loved one, and then again after they've gone to the funeral home or wherever they've go after, they will spend time there as well. So definitely yes, there's no reason why not.
That's good to know.
Orin, can I throw you a question, Orin? Do you think that if more Black people felt that if they were organ donors and their organs were going to be donated to somebody from their community, that we will be more willing to be a donor?
Yeah, I do, because it's very similar to what we found when we were doing Daniel's campaign for the bone marrow stem cell. When people suddenly realize this is going to help one of our own, it's empowerment. They didn't realize a connection in terms of ethnicity matching, and suddenly you saw the videos with the record crowds. The same thing is hopefully going to happen very soon in a groundbreaking blood donation event that's coming up in June. Which is coming up, which hopefully will have again Black people coming forward. I think on living and deceased, if people realize the connection and the gap of the supply line from ourselves to our people and the over-dependency on others, I think the penny would start to drop. I think it's like listening to a song, but they're not listening on the right frequency, so they're missing it. It's that sort of situation. So, any other observations before we wrap things up? We're going to show a video in a second, but I just wanted any of our panelists, any final observations, comments before we take the last 5-6 minutes to wrap things up.
On Tuesday, we've got another anniversary that's coming up, and that's the George Floyd. And like me, some of you might have gone on the protests like myself. And one thing I want to say is that it's not going to take one protest and it's not going to take one law change, I think, for us as a community to really make that real change. But that real change has to come. And I just want to quickly have a quote from Oprah. Oprah said, "The greatest discovery of all time is that a person can change his future by merely changing his attitude." So my question is, so this evening, let us change the future of Black people by merely changing our attitude towards living donation.
I agree. I concur.
Living and deceased donation.
Any other comments before we start to wrap things up?
We've got to do the final.
Yep, and we're going to come to that. I just want to give everyone a final chance to give their final thoughts and views, including Ace, because this is all about you, Ace. You are the embodiment of what we're trying to do, taking this forward, and hopefully this time next year it's a different scenario, different situation for you. Any other final comments? Pastor Ian Sweeney.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think one of the things, again, speaking from a faith context, human life is sacred. All human life is sacred. And I think that the thing about of organ donation, living or deceased, it's always in that respect of the dignity and the sacredness of human life. And I think, and I bear the words of the Council of Della, that the church can and should be doing more. And let's see this as an opportunity, not just about enriching our own lives. And some of our faith community is about, blessings, and it's usually around money and material things. But actually, the greater blessing is bringing life and the quality of life to others. That is no greater blessing that we can bring as a faith community to other people, a better quality of life, so that Ace can live a life without, and I've visited patients who are on dialysis. It's awful. Let's be a blessing to others.
Thank you.
Let's have that conversation. Any more final comments?
Ace, do you want to say anything, my
No,
love?
this is a great conversation. Was really happy to be a part of it, and I hope everybody's taken something away from this today. And hopefully it's the beginning of more conversations like this.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Shall we show Callum? Can you show the second poll questions? We can quickly ask our attendees their views. Just going to bring it up in a second. Okay. The same question again. Now that we've had this quite constructive the debate. Are you for deceased organ donation?
Yes or no?
And then the second question is, are you? Oh, in fact, the second question is wrong. It's really, would you give an organ, a kidney, as a living organ donor if you had the choice? If you had the chance, would you now seriously consider it after listening to especially what Dell has been talking about? We'll give you yes or no. We'll give you 20 seconds to go now. Be interesting to see if there's any changes. Okay, what's the results?
Wow.
25 to 5. Okay. Yep. Very healthy. We have shifted the dial a bit.
Well, this is the second question. Is a slightly different question. Would you donate?
Yeah.
Anybody that is truly interested in living kidney donation, please get in touch with ACLT and we'll tell you how to proceed.
Yeah, and we went from 87% to 95% on the actual opt-out and deceased organ donation sort of question. So that's good.
So just remember, everyone, you are automatically in this system as an organ donor. So when you pass away, the NHS will ask your loved ones if they are happy for your organs to be donated. If you are happy, you can still go to the organ donor register and register online if you wish to make sure. The biggest thing is that you must let your loved ones know of your wishes because they have the final say. So please have this discussion with your family about donating organs. It's so important. And we're just going to round everything off now. We want to say thank you to everyone for attending today. Angela, Ditchfield, Mr. P, Della, Ashley to me, Ace to everyone else. I have that privilege. Mike, thank you so much. Mr. Ian Sweeney and Lonyo, who's had to leave. Thank you so much. Ace, we know you have to go, so don't worry. You shoot off. I'll call you tomorrow.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Ace, big up yourself, man. Big up yourself, yeah?
Much love. Thank you very much, guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're just going to show a very short video by one of our ambassadors, George the Poet. Callum, can you roll the video, please?
I am my brother's keeper, because mortality is deep, but love is deeper. And that's not an expression to misconstrue. I dedicate my life to my sisters too. See, I like to think we're one big family, so I write for my people like Sydney Taylor. But my people don't donate organs, yet we're 3 times more susceptible to kidney failure. Some non-black people are going to hear this poem, so it burns me to have to present this fact. But out of the whole NHS organ donor register, less than 1% is black. It's not hard to tell we're not making the quotas with hundreds of our people currently waiting for donors. Some in danger of slipping straight into comas. We're often just painted as frustrated personas, but this isn't lack of unity within the black community. I choose to believe it's an issue of awareness. I refuse to believe that we simply couldn't care less. So I'm here to talk on a calm one and beg. You'd buy something expensive for an arm and a leg, so why not give something more meaningful?
Powerful, powerful testimony from a young man.
Very good.
And he symbolizes exactly what this is all about. And just before we sign off, just to highlight, and someone's asked in the chat, in the Q&As, please can we highlight what we hinted at in June on blood donation, a campaign called United by Blood, headed by the ACLT, Black Mums Up Front, and Selfie for Life. We work with all 3 of us are working with NHS Blood and Transplant and other stakeholders to put on a groundbreaking session, 8 locations across the country for Black people to ring a particular hotline number 0300 303 2737. I'll repeat, 0300 303 2737. Go to our website, aclt.org, and you can register at those sessions to donate a unit of blood in
Yes.
tribute to a young man called Evan Nathan Smith, who 2 years ago, at the age of 21, passed away because of lack of care and attention when he needed as a sickle cell patient, he needed a timely blood transfusion, and he was also denied oxygen. You've probably heard about the inquest that came out with the decision. In tribute to him, and we've got the generosity of spirit and the word of his family to go forward and do this in his name. And we want hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Black people to ring that number and make an appointment, even if it's the first time, so they can do something powerful for the 14,000 sickle cell patients who are like Evan Nathan Smith, who need well-matched blood. And just like with organ donation, the best matching is when someone has the same ethnicity, and in this case, Black people have certain blood groups which you only find in us, and there's a strong link to getting the right blood to these patients. They will always get the blood, but there will be problems further down the line because of the antibody buildup. If you can get the right blood from the Black people with the same blood groups, it's going to be a lifesaver for so many generations going forward. So please put that word out. Saturday, the 14th of June, World Sickle Cell, 19th of June.
Slow down.
Saturday, the 19th of June.
Don't get this wrong.
Sunday, the 20th of June, which is Father's Day.
Yeah.
ACLT.org. Find all the details. Please, please, please. We need you.
Queues of Black people donating blood. We have 676 appointments to fill, and those appointments have to be filled by our people. You are helping the sickle cell patients in this country, blood cancer patients, mothers who have just given birth, someone that's been in a major road traffic accident or has had a procedure in a hospital who needs blood. Please go to our website, aclt.org. The information is there. You can book your appointment, and you're offering, in Della's words, the gift of life.
So in closing, just really want to say to our special panelists, to our attendees, thank you for being there with us. We're going to do more of this sort of stuff, and really just want to thank you, Callum, Jendai, Ronke, Zara,
all our team,
behind the scenes. Berna, we thank you. Della, Gift of Living. If you want to know about, go to Della's website and giftoflivingdonation.co.uk, aclt.org. Thank you, everyone, for being part of this special initiative. It's being recorded. It's going to be on YouTube, and spread the word. Lives can be saved. And happy anniversary to us all, but we need to do better. There's so much. This is just the beginning.
Thank you. And if you want to help ACE, get in touch with aclt.org. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good evening.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.